Hello, and welcome to Khyber Shards, a 5th edition actual play show set in the Eberron campaign world. It is Friday, and so we are here with a Khyber Shards Answers. We are joined by Casey and Eric. Casey demonstrating that she is more dedicated to this show than I am by calling in from her wonderful vacation and her Disney princess life with wild horses.
Yes.
Right next door. Yeah.
Yeah, that also, everybody got the memo about blue shirts. So
Yes.
well done.
If you know, you know.
Yeah. So,
I can't
no
imagine
big
why
deal.
the two of us were asked to be on this.
Yeah. We
So
don't
unorthodox.
usually double up. It just seemed convenient today since we missed
Yeah.
last week. Nothing really big happened. No, I mean, obviously the reasoning is clear. So I'm going to encapsulate a few different questions by simply saying, how much did everyone expect? What happened? Because that was asked in several ways to each of us. I will
Yes.
go first. I did not expect that specifically. Eric is very considerate and usually lets me know a couple of days in advance when he's not going to let me run an adventure. And so I knew that Eric wanted to have a conversation with Thora. I knew Eric wanted to have a conversation with Shade. So I knew two conversations were happening, and I knew the basic content of the Thora one so that I could think about it, which was also very nice of Eric. I did not know that this was the conversation with Shade and Ari. So
Gotta keep
that's
some mystery.
no, and yes. So my reaction was live, and very much unexpected. So yeah, talk about how you guys went about this and to what degree you talked about it ahead of time and to what degree it was expected. I mean, obviously Eric was expecting it.
Casey was also expecting it. Yeah. I mean, do you want to go first, Casey, or I can talk first to all of it?
Well, yeah, you
fine
go
either
ahead
way.
since you started it. That sounded accusatory.
I did start
Sure.
it. So yeah, I mean, in the context of that particular episode, I had actually back in April, shortly after Gamer Nation Con, when we all got to go see each other in person and have dinner, I shot Casey a message. It was like, "Hey, the next time we have some downtime, Ari's probably going to pull the trigger on this. Like, it's going to happen." And then we just never stopped adventuring. So as much grief as Philip wants to give me, I let you run adventures since January, sir. So I'm just asking.
Sorry. There's a horse
Not my fault
walking
that you guys
behind me
decided
right
not
now.
to rest. Look, we're already jealous.
Sorry, it's just fantastic.
So yeah, no, that's awesome. See, I'd given Casey that level of heads up, and then the day before the recording or the day of the recording, I sent a follow-up message just a heads up, tonight's the night. So but yeah, so in the context of that episode, and unlike Ari and Pog, Eric and Colin have had multiple conversations about the Ari Shade dynamic. And so I think Colin had a pretty good inclination that it was happening that episode as well. So yeah. But
Yeah, Eric has given me a heads up for all of it. At the very, very beginning, anybody who was in the watch party, that's where you linked that, right? Or was that in the Discord?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which I guess watch party is in the
I linked
Discord.
it in the
But
watch party.
yes, that very first moment at the beginning, and Eric had given me a heads up from the very beginning. Hey, I think this is the direction Ari is going in relation to Shade. No, no expectations, but that's where they're headed. And then he gave me a specific heads up. Okay, I think tonight is the night, I will ask for a walk.
Yeah.
But again, Eric was very clear, like, I
Yeah.
just want to give you a heads up. There's no expectations for what you and or your character are going to do with this, which I greatly appreciate. I generally don't like to think significantly in advance of what my character is going to do. Um, but I do get,
Hmm.
I am an anxious person. And so knowing, oh, I haven't even thought in that direction. Let's just watch Casey sit for 5 minutes going, not super
Yeah.
entertaining. So I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah.
Part of this, Eric, to you is, to what degree did you expect Shade's response to the declaration?
I was fully expecting, because once again, something that I'm very appreciative of is while Case and I were communicating about this aspect of our characters, she has always been very forthcoming of like, Shade's not going to handle it well. Like, Shade's not going to know what to do with this information. So, and I think the very first conversation that we had, which is when Philip wasn't available for a KSA, and so I hosted it with Casey. We just stayed on afterwards and like had a chat about it. um I was just like, well, I enjoy torturing my characters, so that's totally fine with me that if Shade's not going to be able to handle it well. So Shade kissing Ari was not a- anywhere in the sphere of possibilities in my brain. And in fact, the conversation that Pog and Ari had after the announcement at the table was actually something that Colin and I had like spitballed as being a potential, like, if slash when the Shade conversation goes poorly, Ari going to Pog and being like, I screwed all of this up. I screwed up another friendship just like I screwed up your friendship, because apparently I just can't let people be close to me without like making things worse. And so, but then it went well. Like, it was, and so I was like, there's no reason for Ari to go talk to Pog. Ari's great. So, yeah, did not expect that reaction from Shade. I mean, aspects of it, absolutely. But the actual positive vibes going out of it was not expected. So,
So a question we got from Laura, I thought would be interesting as in the context of this, was, have you ever had romance with characters before? I have, in home games, had romance between player characters in my One Ring game, between one of RA's characters and another friend's characters. I have either of you ever had romance as a part of a game, a character before?
not as a player character, as a DM. I mean, I've flirted with Philip so many times I've lost count at this
It's
point.
true.
But but no, not as a player.
I don't think any of my characters have. Not that I recall.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, as far as it goes, I like, Eric let Casey know, Eric let me know that this was going on. And that's, obviously the way to go. Springing it on another player is very much not cool. Don't do that.
Correct.
The worst idea.
But
Yeah.
as long as everyone's comfortable with it, there's nothing, I don't find any problems with it. There are definitely, I have players that I play with regularly that I would be more comfortable flirting with in role play than others, just because I know them and know their reaction. But
Yeah.
yeah. So it's very much like,
I'm just thinking of like
I definitely wasn't expecting it with this group when we started the campaign.
Yeah. I wasn't either, honestly. Like, that wasn't an aspect that I was even on my radar until that moment, that conversation with Ari and Shade. But I'm just thinking about the multiverse where I didn't communicate any of this to Casey or Philip, and that conversation happened, and I'm just like, hey, I'm in love with you, and like how weird that would have been, and unfair to everyone else at the table. But yeah.
Yeah. Casey, Mia inquires, what made you decide that Shade would kiss Ari? That Shade would react the way she did?
Oof. Um, so I mentioned earlier that I don't like to think significantly about what my characters are going to do. And so when Eric told me about this possibility, I thought about the options. So didn't decide how Shade felt or what she was going to do, but thought about the different possibilities given different contexts. And um and so I had not decided that she would kiss Ari in that moment or that she would kiss him at all um until probably about, I don't know, a good 30 seconds, maybe minute before actually saying it. And it was so much of, and this is so heartbreaking, so I apologize to Ari fictionally. And it, there's so much insecurity in her mind right now. Not somebody, the Solarka conversation has her questioning whether or not she's a good person. Um, and so Ari standing in front of her, telling her, well, I think you're a good person. And she values his opinion. Um, so Ari saying that she's a good person, Ari telling her that obviously he's not going to leave the group is really touching on all of her insecurities and telling her what she wants to hear. And because of that, that's what drove me to have that moment is okay, well, these are all the things that I'm scared about, and he's confirming all of these in this moment. Um, and so not as manipulative, but just as I she is finding comfort in that moment in that conversation, and so reciprocating that with a kiss in terms of um, yeah, appreciation. I don't know. That sounds terrible in the way that I'm phrasing it.
It was a thank you.
It was a Shade was I like this, but I'm confused.
Hmm.
Yeah,
That's fair.
yeah. And that was Ari's
yeah.
reaction to the kiss as well. Is I like this, but I'm confused.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Okay. Well, we have got quite a number of questions, some of which we've approached already, but to jump in, Emily asks, Eric, what were you expecting to happen when Ari told Thora about his desire to become a Stormlord? I imagine it wasn't being locked in a closet.
Yeah, no. I mean, so the Ari Thora dynamic, and so this is once again in classic KSA fashion. We have content that has not come out yet that may
Right.
or may not be relevant to this discussion. So I'm going to speak to Ari's mindset about all of this at the end of the episode that just aired, and let the stuff that comes if it is relevant. Who knows? Ari was hopeful in his mind. Ari was hopeful that what happened at its core ended up happening, which was Ari just spent a long time telling Thora, help me, teach me, guide me. Here's what I want. Like, here's what I want. And in Ari's mind, the way being obviously being locked in the closet wasn't like exactly what he thought. But the conversation that Thor had at the end of that experience of here are all the reasons why it's dangerous to be a Stormlord. Think on that. And in Ari's mind, the rest of that sentence is, and let me know what conclusion you come to. Obviously, from Thor's perspective, it might be different, but for Ari, it was a genuine, here are the things that you have to think about and contend with if this is actually the path that you want to go forward. And so as Ari's mind, he's like, awesome. She's making an effort. And I appreciate that. And contextualized with the follow-up conversation where Pog and Shade come in. and have this very kind of reconciling the idea of principles and all this kind of stuff. It really kind of affirmed in Ari's mind that like Thor is trying to help guide them to a certain extent. And so in Ari's mind, Thor has left him with some things to think about, and he is trusting that Thor will give him a bit of time to think through those things to come back with an answer so that they can continue the conversation. We'll see how that goes. Because, and so this speaks to the larger thing without getting too much in the weeds, because I think a lot of this is interesting to have discussed in fiction. Because I might be misremembering this, Philip, and Casey, you all can let me know if I am. To my memory, Thor has never stated to the group or Ari specifically that like she wants to be a Stormlord. It's just been this kind of assumptive thing that like, oh, obviously Thor would be the person to do this. And in Ari in fiction doesn't get that at all, because how Ari assumes that this would go, they free up the position, and then Thor would do what she did with Arlo, where she would find somebody who developed a mark that was like a outstanding politician or something back in Corvair that has lost their position, like come work for us, be in this position, and help us make this better. And so Ari was just trying to get ahead of that conversation and be like, instead of getting someone else, get me. Because Ari assumes that Thor wants to be the head of the school. Like Thor is running the academy. And if she wanted to be a Stormlord when she approached the group, that would have been what she led with. Like, but she led with, let's found a school to protect these kids, provide them a safe place. And so, yeah, that's Ari's assumption, is he didn't feel like he was undercutting Thor at all. He was trying to put himself forward for an open position that Thor was going to try and fill. And so, if it turns out, because once again, in fiction, Thor has never stated, I want to be the Stormlord. So if Thora reveals that to the group, Ari's going to have some interesting feelings about that. So anyway, that's kind of why Ari had no shame, for lack of a better way to put it, when he said to Thora, I want to be the Stormlord, because he assumed she was looking for someone. So yeah.
Interesting.
That is interesting.
To both of you,
yeah.
Between your characters, who do you think would make a better Stormlord?
Obviously, Shade.
I mean, it depends on what you need a Stormlord to be. No, I think Shade would make an outstanding Stormlord, in the Sel Shadra fashion of "Don't mess with me, or I will kill you."
I think Ari would make a compassionate Stormlord. Like, let's actually fix things. But no, Shade would definitely be the stab you behind the scenes type Stormlord.
Yeah.
Probably not stab you behind the scenes. She would want you to know that it was her.
Yeah. How else is the message get across?
Right.
People die all the time. I think you kind of approach this, Eric, with Savage Artificer asks, I know Thora shut down Ari hard, which obviously Ari does not how Ari interpreted it.
Disagree.
When he expressed his intent to become Stormlord, but does that remain his intent? I feel that you have answered this, but
yeah, I mean, he's thinking about it, because like he genuinely thinks that the relationships he's developed with the rest of the party and their capacity to assist in this endeavor would potentially mitigate some of the problems that Thor has with Ari's view of the world. But no, I mean, he's weighing whether or not giving up that sense of safety and his ability to trust people is a worthy sacrifice to try and enact some of the changes that he wants to as a Stormlord. So that's kind of what he's weighing right now, is he willing to kill that part of himself for a bigger purpose.
Mm-hmm. And you know what every body of entrenched politicians wants? Some young new guy to come in and say, here's all the things y'all have been doing wrong. Savage Artificer also asks, Casey, has Shade moved past her insecurities regarding her friends leaving her? I ask because she seemed to be taking more of an interest in things outside her immediate group of friends when she was interested in how Lady Selshadra asserts power and influence.
It definitely has moved from the surface level worry that she has all the time, which is clearly where she was for most of the campaign so far. And it's moved down. She feels much more comfortable, much more secure in where her friends are, and that they're her family now. We would kill for each other. But especially in the recent series of events, right? A gigantic earthquake, the relationship complexity brought on by Ari being interested romantically sort of has her on more rocky ground. Like, what does this mean um, for my friend group? They could have been lost in this earthquake, and so it's I think a core part of her. I don't think it's something she's going to ever get over in that sense, but I think that she has been more secure recently um, in that. Yeah.
Cool. From Laura for Casey, how did the conversation with Solarka affect how Shade sees her carefully crafted morals? It must have been confusing to have two different groups she trusts so much tell her different things. With the Moon Spears having shaped her core, you kill people for family, and now Solarka saying you shouldn't kill people just because they're in your way. I have something to say on the behalf of the Moon Spears, but I want to hear your answer first.
Well, now I want to know what the Moon Spears are going to.
The Moon Spears did not say family are the people you murder for. That has never been a statement from the Moon Spears. The Moon Spears said, you put yourself in danger for our daughter. That makes you family. It's very much the mirror image of what we've been saying. Family are the people you would put yourself in danger for. Now, there's definitely a much greater willingness to commit violence on the part of the Moon Spears than on the part of Solarka. But the Moon Spears did not define family as those you will commit murder on behalf of.
But that's such a beautiful example of Shade's warped worldview. Like, yes, that's what the Moon Spears said, but this is obviously like a core value of Shade now. Like, this is the definition of family.
Yes.
Solarka's conversation, honestly, it's unsatisfactory. So I'm sorry, Laura, but we don't know yet how this is going to fully impact Shade, because exactly as you pointed out, Shade values the opinion of the people that she considers herself close to. And I don't remember if I explicitly stated this, but definitely was what was running through my mind during the Ari and Shade conversation is Ari is essentially Shade's moral compass. And that's unhealthy. I mean, in a relationship where you have to establish for the other person what their morals are, that is huge red flag. And that's sort of how Shade views a lot of her friends slash family. And she views Ari as a very moral person and Solarka as a very as a good person. And so if what they say is contradicting what she thinks defines her as doing the right thing, yeah, I mean, cognitive dissonance is what's happening right now, and she definitely has in no way worked through that. It just absolutely is unsettling her.
But she's had so much time, Casey, between the Solarka conversation and now. Like,
And nothing else is going on. I mean, she's had plenty
Yeah.
of time to process this.
Yeah.
Nothing else thrown on her plate. I will say kudos to Philip. I have never seen a dungeon master so expertly dissect and decimate two players like Solarka did in that conversation with Pog and Shade. The look on Colin and Casey's faces during that conversation of just utter confusion and terror at what Solarka was saying, which Solarka was only saying reasonable things like, no, you should not kill a shopkeeper because they won't sell something to you. And Shade just being like, what? Like, it was a joy to get to just sit back and watch that scene play out.
It was very fun. When Pog said, well, we're just right here, let's go see Solarka. I immediately thought, well, wait a minute. Like, this is, I assume that Pog's usual pattern is to go regale Solarka with his adventure. But this,
how do you regale this job?
Yeah, there's almost nothing heroic about this job. I mean, the fight with the Shadow Monk was very cool and swashbuckling, and the fight with the Sawagan. So like there's totally things that Pog could describe that would, make Solarka very proud of him. But it comes down to but wait, why were you doing this? What was this guy? And so that's why I asked Colin, how much you go into. Is this just here are the adventurous things we did? And so when Colin said, everything, I was like, okay, well, then Solarka has some questions about what you do exactly. So that was very fun. And yes, watching Casey and Colin react in character to that was deeply hilarious. And also like playing out Solarka's dawning reaction that she's done something to these two people that she loves. It was good too.
Well, and also
Solarka's such a great character.
Yes. The gears turning in Solarka's head though of like realizing what she said that has like decimated these two people, and then the realization what I said shouldn't have had this impact. Like
these are things you should have thought about.
Well, I tried to play it as Solarka's thought process is, I must have missed something. I have got to not understand what happened here. There's no way that it's this as simple as it is in my head.
You did play that beautifully, because there were definitely rhetorical questions that we were answering with the wrong rhetorical response.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the fall. I'm looking forward to Pog and Shade having an opportunity to process that kind of thinking, because they're definitely the two characters who have the least inclination to think carefully before taking an action, which, let me say, as the dungeon master, I appreciate that Pog and Shade are an antidote to analysis paralysis. But yes, I'm looking forward to seeing that and seeing how it evolves the characters. Hopefully not in a like sudden complete personality shift sort of way, but I'm interested to see how that evolves those two characters.
Now, are you worried that you have given us big questions to process and consider, and obviously we need to go to our other wise sages? Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes, the other wise sages of Stormreach.
Well, and I think it's really interesting how, as specifically the journey Pog's on, Shade a little bit, but Pog really having to reckon with the idea that like Solarka asking, why did you do this? And his response being, I was told to. And that being enough until the conversation with Solarka going, wait a second. I trust people when they tell me to do something, that's the right thing to do. And so this reckoning of the questioning of inherent authority of the people above them, i.e. Thora, alongside potential conflict between Thora and Ari over the whole Stormlord thing, and those things creating this weird storm around the party's relationship with Thora, and then how in the world Ezri's going to fall into that. Like, So poor RA, just Ezri's along for the ride. So
I do slightly worry that I will break the party by asking pretty boilerplate questions.
You're
Every now and
dealing
again.
with teenagers and early 20-somethings, Philip. Basic questions are troublesome at best.
I do recall. Laura inquires to Eric, if Ari were to become a Stormlord, how would you see that affecting the campaign and the rest of the group?
So when I thought about this, and to pull back the curtain once again, Philip knew that Ari was going to be making this pitch to Thora. Like I as a player tend to try and give people a heads up when I'm going to be throwing stuff at them. Like, so in Eric the player's brain, the majority of the time, and this oftentimes doesn't read in the campaign, the majority of our characters' time is away from the table, the microphone. Like we have weeks of downtime. And so in my brain, it wouldn't have a huge effect if we continue with the format we have, because Ari will be around for 3 weeks, and then there'll be a 3-day period where Ari's off doing crazy stuff, and then he's back again for a few more weeks. So like in actuality, he could be in the office a lot of the time, but then also in thinking through that is where I was like, you know, who would be a great number 2 that could handle it if Ari gets sucked off the Feywild? Mrs. B would be an outstanding person. So yeah. So that was my thought, is I didn't think it would have a large effect other than the types of jobs we could potentially get by Philip utilizing Ari's position. And in terms of how it affects the rest of the group, as much as they wanted it to, like Ari would go into the office, and if Shade was like, hey, I want to come too, then great. Ari would actually want them around, because Ari is not the most self-aware person, but he knows that he has a hard time knowing when somebody's about to stab him. So having Shade, Ezri, Pog around to either see it coming or deter people from doing it would certainly have been some in Ari's plan. So yeah.
Among you make one fully functioning adult.
As is a friend group in their 20s. Just think about Yumi and Colin when we were in college.
No. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, among us, we made one fully functioning adult, and that was me. Let's see. Emily asks, Eric, you've kind of addressed this. How does Ari feel about Thora potentially becoming the next Stormlord instead of him?
I mean, without getting too deep into it, because I want there to be an organic element of like the circumstances surrounding it and what Thora says to Ari about it. But if it's just very much this assumptive, like, oh, I was going to be the next Stormlord, what are you talking about? There's going to be a bit of a hint of betrayal. Like Ari, very briefly, I'm going to get, so we talked about like Ari being a moral person in Shade's eyes and stuff. And I think that Ari really, much to his detriment, subscribes a lot to like Kant's categorical imperatives of, you know, Ari's worldview is, if I do something, how would I feel if everybody did that to me all the time? And if I don't like it, then I'm not going to do it, because I don't want to live in a world where people could do that thing. And so that's why Ari doesn't like he stole the map because somebody was threatening kids that he likes. And so is it okay for people to do compromising things in order to protect children? Yes, I will agree to do this. Is it okay to kidnap somebody because they are political inconvenience? No, I'm going to have a problem with what we're doing. But the subsequent part of that also is, you don't treat people just as a means. Like, you don't treat people as a tool to be used. And so if Ari's context in which Thora wants to become the Stormlord is that the school was a stepping stone, if the school was like, get established in the city, establish a reputation, so that then once this position comes over, I can transition out of the school into being a Stormlord, Ari's going to feel like he was a tool being used for that purpose. And that's going to bother Ari deeply. And so
Thora's the cause of the earthquake all along. She planned the whole thing. She planned for a freak earthquake to bring about the demise of one of the Stormlords.
You can wait for your opportunity. Like, you don't have to orchestrate it, but you can strike while the iron's hot. So no, I mean, that's like, but once again, context is going to matter. The conversations are going to matter. So Ari might be totally fine with Thora, depending on how it's presented, or he might have a big problem with it because if he feels like he's just been a tool being used by Thora this whole time, because in Ari's mind, he has tried with Thora a lot of times to get in on the more administrative side of this. Like, right after they established the school, he said to Thora, "Hey, I would love to go take meetings, meet with people, have these conversations, go with you," and that never materialized. And so then Ari was like, "Okay, I would like to go talk to these gangs and establish relationships and develop allies." And so Ari feels like he's been trying to demonstrate his value as somebody other than a member of the strike force. And it's potentially hitting the point where Ari is going to feel like Thor is just never going to see him that way. And so that's kind of the situation Ari's in right now when it comes to Thora and the Stormlord situation. It's not entirely about the Stormlord position. It's about Ari's value to the school and to Thora specifically. So, yeah.
Just needs affirmation.
I mean, he is a 20-year-old whose parents died when he was young and he was a child soldier. Yeah, Ari needs affirmation from somebody, and the kiss helped a lot. So
I enjoyed this episode and the last one because I very, very clearly had Thora state that she was not applying for a maternal position, and this entire episode and the one before it had a lot of but no, but mom,
Right.
If not you, who then? So
Right.
the obvious answer is Mrs. B.
Mrs. B can't give
I think
Ari
she
what he
brought that
needs.
up.
That's true. Mrs. B cannot give Ari. It's interesting because Shade is the one who's all about power, but that's like really what Ari needs in affirmation is for someone to give him a little bit of power.
Just recognition, like recognize the contributions I make. So, yeah.
I have thought about it, how that would affect Shade if Ari became a Stormlord, because that would be very appealing.
Mm-hmm.
Being romantically involved in somebody that has power, like that's.
Oh,
so,
man.
I'm not going to get into specifics now because, like, when the conversation comes up specifically, like Ari had thoughts about Shade's specific dynamic if he were to become a Stormlord, but I'm going to save that for in fiction. But Ari had thoughts about Shade's skill set in relation to his ambition. So stay tuned, Casey.
Let's see. I think that may be all the questions.
I mean, something that we didn't really touch on to like Laura's final question about the fact that I had like an exact timestamp that I shared in the watch party. Like, here's the moment. So like I have the receipts. I have the Discord message that's dated like January 30th, 2022 was like the, hey, want to pick your brain about something to Casey. And it honestly wasn't even entirely like, I felt it a little bit in the moment when Ari said, "I like you more than most people," and Shade responded, "I like you too." But it was, I saw it at the corner of my eye, Colin's reaction to what we were saying, and Colin being like, what's happening right now? And so I think after that recording, we just like hopped into a Discord call, and I was like, I feel like there was like something organically building there. And he's like, "Dude, I thought it was planned. Like, I thought that you all were doing a bit." Like, it was so transparent to me. And so that's what got the wheels turning in my head about like, is that something that like would be interesting and compelling moving forward? And I saw a lot of reactions when Ari in the conversation says, "I feel like it's been coming for a while or building up for a while." and people going, has it? Like, what? And I genuinely tried to go back to, because Ari is in his early 20s. I tried to go back to college and like, how do you develop a relationship in that context of like, you're seeing this person every single day, you're eating every meal with them, you have like virtually no time apart from this person. And so it's not really asking people on a date, being intentional about spending like these big, it's the little moments. And so going back through, I feel like it built in that manner because it would be like when Pog, Solarka, Shade, and Ari were going out to eat, like Ari like slowed down a little bit to talk to Shade one-on-one.
Which was
And like,
apparently a terrible experience for Pog and Solarka.
right? God. And so tried to have that moment of like talking to Shade and acknowledging like how good she had done on that adventure and stuff. I think it was in the wake of the Harish. No, it was the Tyrus, the Shaper. Blackbriar.
That's Tyrus.
Yeah, that job. And so it was lots of little moments like that where I was trying to have Ari just have meaningful moments with Shade, of developing the relationship in that way, because that's how early 20-year-olds do it. Is you have these small moments until you just explode with a proclamation of like, I'm in love with you. So yeah, that's what I was going for, and that's why I feel like it was maybe a bit more subtle than what a lot of people picked up on. But yeah, but January 2020 or 2022.
Cool. I did find a question that we had skipped over, which was from Emily. Is there a memory that Ari would like to be taken by
Emily,
the Forgotten Prince?
You gotta stop. Like, for those of you, go check the comments on the video.
Right.
Emily had a wonderful idea about how Philip can torture me.
Oh man,
so
so good.
Yeah, I mean, the context is if the Forgotten Prince steals a memory, have it be either Ari being in love with Shade or wanting to reconcile with Pog being the memories that go away. A memory that I would like the prince to I mean, maybe like the light going out of his mom's eyes as she died in his arms. Like, that might be a cool one to go away. Yeah, Thor is saying I'm not your mom was a real deep cut to Ari, like, because he like
she said that at the beginning of that was the first meeting. That was bullet point 1 on the agenda.
But in the moment when Ari is bearing his soul, it's like, I'm not your mom's like, yeah, I know, I don't have one. She died. But I don't know, some of the bad stuff with Blackbriar, Tommel, and just wipe that out. That'd be cool.
What about just having ever met Malcolm?
That might make it sting a little less. Yeah, because then, Ari is perpetually bummed about Malcolm. So yeah, that would probably be a good one. So yeah, I did want to ask Casey though, in the context of like the build, like, did you pick up on any of the Ari Shade moments, like after, like, obviously with the context of knowing that was something that Ari was kind of building towards?
Ooh, I'm not sure that I can. Fine. What?
If the answer is no, that's fine. But
well, I'm not sure if I can remove, you having told me that was the direction.
Yeah.
And so there were some moments that I think I picked up on them because I knew that was the direction that you were going, and there were small moments that I tried to reciprocate that. In particular, the fight when you went down, just spending any spell I had to try to get you back, knowing it's not going to work.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think they were small moments built over a long period of time. And these are small moments between two very unhealthy people.
Yes.
But yeah, I think so.
Okay. I was curious.
Very cool. Well, I believe that concludes all of our questions, and so we will wrap up this episode here. Casey, thanks for joining us and making us envious of your vacation locale.
That was really the goal.
I mean, it is a lot prettier than where I was when I skipped the episode last week. So, well done. Thank you all so much.
Mia did have a question about whether or not I'd planned to drop 2 bombshells in back-to-back episodes, and the answer is no. I
plan to drop 2 bombshells in one episode.
No. If we would have slept before the Jonas job or like taken a rest, that's when the Shade confession would have happened. But it was because the Stormlord stuff happened then. So that's the only reason it was back-to-back episodes. So yeah, that's Philip's fault.
That is not Philip's fault. It's the whole we just take whatever a figure of authority gives us. So Sandra says, here's your next assignment. And you guys are just like, well, now, obviously, immediately.
Anyway, sorry to break up your intro. Continue.
Outro.
Outro. No.
Thank you all so much for the questions. If you'd like to submit questions, you can do so over on our Discord. Links to that and everything else are down below. New episodes of Khyber Shards drop every Monday. New Khyber Shards answers every Friday. And until next time, thanks for rolling with us.